Yo, what's going on, guys? As requested, I'm making the build video to follow up on my Scorch Zealot set from the previous video. So let's get into it. For the weapons, to start off, I'm using the Sunfall with Firestorm. So with Firestorm, what happens is that it'll bring down a beam of like fire, and it'll burn anything in like a few meter radius, like about 5, maybe 6 meters, and deals a shit ton of direct damage to whatever it hits. And it'll pair really well with Resistance Breaker, so that when I do hit anything with my gun, anything on the other side of it will be taking 35% more damage for a short time. And the Weakness Trap just deals like roughly 300,000k, just a little over, and it will go up with the other passive bonuses that we do have. So this will be nice when we pair it with another piece on our armor, which we'll get to in a second. But do know that weakness also causes whatever you're hitting to deal less damage to you for a short period of time, and it does have a cooldown of 3 seconds. On to the next one. Death Shield. I use this with Fortress. This should be the tried and true gun for literally any pseudo AP FP build. Universal. Everybody knows about the Death Shield. So in this particular mod, it comes with Fortress, so that shots increase your current armor and resistance by 5% up to 3 times, and it stacks up, and it does give you a 20% damage bonus increase for roughly 10 seconds after. So what I did notice is that with Fortress it does proc, and then you can swap off the gun and still have the extra effect. And then I also have Violent Rupture with it, so it'll create a volcanic explosion dealing up to 568,000 damage within a 6 meter radius. So this is just good with crowd control, so that when I do inevitably use my my CC skills, my Ash Blast, my Feed the Flames, it will deal damage to whatever is there. And usually it could be because I'm playing on monster, like usually with the Trial of Taria Guitar, there's a lot of monster maps, and how do you call it, there's some like human or feral enemies to be able to fight. So this is just good for those enemies peeking behind around cover, or things that just straight up come to you, things that'll get hit by your immobilized skills regardless. On my Torment and Agony, I do have Anomaly Enhancement for the bonus 40% of my Anomaly Power and Firepower, so this does scale with both. And then I also have Judgment and Force, with the shots mark enemies when reloading, deals 10 times my weapon damage. Honestly, I do feel like you could switch out Anomaly Enhancement for the Golem's Limb perk, the Lock and Load, so that when you use your melee, the gun will charge up a how do you call it? It's a piercing shot, like a pulse shot, and it will pierce cover and deal damage. But I do like Anomaly Enhancement just for the extra bit of damage that it gives you. Scorch Zealot's Crown. For the headpiece, I'm using 3-piece Scorch Zealot. I'm using a Gauntlet of the Cannonball and just a normal purple piece. Honestly, I would prefer for this to be an Apocalypse gear or an apocalyptic piece, but it's fine. This will do for now. If there's any updates to it, I'll let you know. But I do have Ash and Bloom, so that enemies this is a new skill, so enemies afflicted by Feed the Flames explode, dealing 124,000 damage, and inflict Ash to a 3 meter radius. So this is just a good way to just increase the CC, the crowd control that that the skill does, and it does give it an extra bit of damage too. Then I have Ride the Wave, so that I might allow one more heat wave by default, and this is really good. If I could get this on if I could get a apocalyptic piece of this, I would have another thing for Ash Blast, honestly, to lower its cooldown just a bit. On my Scorched Zealot chest, I did switch out the mod for this, using to replace it with martial arts, because I do feel like with the chest, at least the armor set as a whole, it slows down the melee recharge rate from the default, and it just was kind of jarring to use. And then because for a set like this, you want to be able to keep constantly having that melee up all the time. But I do like martial arts to reduce the cooldown of the melee. So when you need it, and then you can keep using the melee. And then also for the Scorch, for the set bonus, it does say that if the melee now fires a projectile and explodes upon impact, and it deals roughly 230,000 damage, and it inflicts ash to enemies within a 5-meter radius. So with this, it does also increase the damage every time that you use the melee, but then it resets when on the next melee use. So every 2 melees, it'll reset its damage and go back down, up, down, up, down. So that's why I had Captain Hunter just increase the damage a bit against the elites because the melee was kind of lacking. Yeah. Then I also have Ash and Boost so that when I do use my Ash Blast, when I do use my Feed the Flames, it'll increase the damage just a bit. And it's even better against the captains, or at least the Chugo against, excuse me. But for this, I do have bonus fire. The set comes with bonus firepower, close range damage, and cooldown reduction. So you can see that it wants you to use firepower, but at the same time, I feel like this is like the Shilby set where it wants you to use AP, but you also have to dip into using FP a little bit. So that's completely fine. On to the next one. For the waist, I do have Cauterizing Flames. I did keep the first mod, so every percent of overheal gain increases bonus firepower by 1% to 5 seconds up to 50%. This, I haven't really noticed much of, but I do notice the amount of extra damage you do get to your weapon for it. So I do like this perk. It's niche, but when it works, it's doing its job well. Then I also have Burnout. I didn't really switch on any of the mods for my for the armor because I feel like a lot of it's good. You just have to really emphasize on martial arts. Then for the Heat Wave, I have Burnt Out, which is our third skill. I have Burnt Out, which damage enemies take 15% more damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. So this is pretty good when you have. So usually the rotation for this is you want to use the Ash Blast, then Feed the Flames. They're taking damage. And then during that time you can Ash Blast again if your cooldown is low enough, and they take the extra damage. But what's good about this is synergizes with the Sunfall perk that I have, the Firestorm, and the Eruption perk. So things are taking a buttload extra damage for the from my weapons as well whenever they take Ash. Just give me a second, I have to charge my charger. This is kind of counterintuitive to what I want to do, and it's not working with me. Alright, forgot to charge it. So yeah, things will be taking extra damage from our mods. You're not really worrying about the weapon damage, you just want to keep swapping in and out constantly. Well, not constantly, but once you get off, I would say start with your Feed the Flames or Ash Blast usually, and then you do Firestorm. So once you see what we have in our class tree, you'll see why. So the goal is to be constantly inflicting things with Ash and making them take more damage in return. And then our then I also had the Waist Claws, Power from the Attributes, which is really important, so that whenever you inflict things with Ash, they take more damage, and it can stack up to 4 times. And this is really good. It'll stack with our weapon mods, and it'll just keep escalating our damage. The goal with this is to keep escalating the damage. So, and this is why I found it so fun to use, because once you inflict Ash, the enemies are technically debuffed when they take vulnerable from the class tree. Then on top of that, they're going to take extra damage from the mods that we have. You're going to Heat Wave, hit them with that, they'll take extra damage from that. Then you Feed the Flames again, you hit them with that. So it's just constantly cycling your debuff on them. So Gauntlets of the Cannonball, I did replace Captain Hunter on him because I already have it equipped in another piece with Stand Tall. So you get the extra anomaly power and firepower when standing out of cover, which you're not really ever going to be in cover. I don't know why on earth you would be, but you do get this bonus, and it's a nice bonus to have. And then just for this, to make our weapons be able to do a little extra damage, we have Personal Space to grant the 12% extra damage bonus to our close range weapons, which is an SMG and a shotgun and a sidearm. So we do benefit from this quite a bit. And then I have Empiric Mag. This here is a dead mod. If I could replace this with anything, I'd replace it with something that was it, Feeble for the Weak or something like that, to increase damage, extra damage against vulnerable targets, or have it do a little extra to our how do you call it, our heat wave. But this by itself is just fine for now. And then I have just some legendary boots because I don't have an apocalypse piece for this, no, at least not one that I really wanted. But I do have wide grip, so that it increases the absorption range to one more target for Feed the Flame, so that's just a little bit extra more CC that we have. Because mind you, whenever we use Feed the Flames, the ash will be spread to anything close to that's hit by it, so we can infect an entire group of enemies and use it fine. But this here, and then we have Trample the Weak. So mind you, remember, on our Sunfall, we also have Weakness Trap. So not only are we applying weakness, but now anything that also takes damage from the Weakness Trap being applied will do more damage. Then it has the resistance lowered for our elites, for the Perforos, the Alpha Perforos that like to jump in your face a lot. For anything that has resistance, they'll be shut down. No, not completely shut down, but they will be taking a good handful more damage. And this is just good to have. So the goal with this set is to constantly keep escalating damage, reset, keep constantly escalating damage, and have constant crowd control, decent damage. Moving over to our skills, I told you, we already have Feed the Flames, we have Ash Blast, and we have Heat Wave. So the rotation for this is that you want to use your Ash Blast, you inflict your Ash, anything that gets hit by it also takes extra damage, right, from being vulnerable. And also having Ash inflicted on them. Then you want to apply Heat Wave to get the burn on them. So this is just nice to have. I like the Heat Wave just for the added little piece of crowd control, because I don't really like volcanic rounds. One, for the cooldown that it has, and then two, for the fact that it's a bit much to feed into if you don't have like at least 2 pieces of armor going in for it. And I kind of like the armor being in our crowd control skills, so Heat Wave is just a nice little added bonus to it. And then our Feed the Flames, it doesn't do much damage, but it does cause enemies to not only explode, but then also spread ash to anything near them, which is just nice to have. Over to our skills, we went completely deep in the top tree for Pryromancer, so we picked up as many as many of these firepower nodes and resistance pierce that we can get. I did also take Assault Master to increase our SMG damage. I'm not sure if this also works with the mods, but I do like this, and I can feel it just a bit. And then I use HUD Situation for our mobilize skills to increase our anomaly power. So when we use these, our Ash Blast, our Feed the Flames, we will be fed anomaly power, and it'll feed into our melee. Our melee works on anomaly power. You can get at least 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, roughly 1.5 million damage for melee on once Ash is also applied. And then mind you, also the melee also does deal Ash damage on top of the big damage that it does. And then I do have Curse of Pompeii and Trial of the Ashes. Oh, excuse me, Curse of Pompeii, yeah, and Trial of the Ashes. So anything afflicted with Ash also takes more damage, and Ash also lasts 50% longer. So it just betters up our crowd control and being able to shred through things. It'll buy us time to reset our skills and keep doing this. I took another resistance pierce, more firepower nodes up here. I did take Leeching Force so that anything mobilized skills doubles weapon leech for a few seconds, which is good to have because we don't really have a way of getting much health back other than dealing 1 burns and 2 Feed the Flames. So the extra weapon leech is good to have, and you also get health back from your mods that we do have that do damage over time. Then here I took we had to take Nimble's Flame, but I do like this decreased reload time, because a lot of times if you don't really have extremely high status power, they do get out of the Ash effect. Ash, Ice, anything that has lockdown abilities, they get out of it really fast without it. So this decreased reload time is just good for us to reset and then be able to deal some more damage with our guns. Twice as long elites take more damage and deal less damage to you. And then I did take both nodes up here, so any enemy afflicted with Ash also take a lot more damage. So the goal is that once we do these, we have a lot more things feeding into things being inflicted with Ash. This whole build is based around Ash effect, no burns. And then we do have reduced mobilize cooldown, because I do realize that the immobilize abilities do have a bit of a high cooldown. So cooldown reduction is kind of a must. I don't remind you, I don't have my power, it's only 30, so I don't have all 200 of our ascension points. But optimally, if I wanted to run this as a starting, I would always use cooldown reduction. And then lastly, Ash Breaker. Activate immobilize skills, increase weapon damage by 45% for 10 seconds. This is amazing, and it goes hand in hand with all the mods that do extra damage, and it feeds into everything that we have. Down into the packs tree. Now, there's two schools of thought when you do this. So, my initial that I like doing right now is doing top tree Gunblazer, and going in, coming in hot. I do have Ash and Wig, so that shots. This is kind of like a free damage link on enemies afflicted with Ash, so they deal 30% extra damage in a small area with each other, or on enemies just afflicted with Ash. So, and then Hot Streak, crit shots increase weapon damage by 60%. This is pretty pretty niche, because we're not really worrying about hitting crits. We're just worrying about just mobbing. Complete mobbing is what this build is good at. Complete and utter mobbing is all you want. We don't really care about hitting shots. And we have carbonization, so the enemies hit by your mobilized skills receive 20% extra, 20% more anomaly damage. This goes hand in hand with our melee as well. Everything that we do realistically feeds right back into the melee. So I felt that the top tree kind of tied everything together, and then the last one, it does carve and footprint, so that each enemy hit by an immobilized skill also reduces the cooldown of the next immobilized skill. So this feeds back and forth between our Feed to Flames and Ash Blast, Feed to Flames, Ash Blast. So no matter how you cut it, you use both these skills, it'll reduce the cooldown. So usually, if there's a few enemies, I do Feed the Flames. If there's a lot, like just straight up rush me, if I'm playing by myself, I'll do Ash Blast first. But I don't know, it doesn't really matter how you do the rotation for it, as long as you inflict vulnerable. But usually I would go with Ash Blast first, just to get it out the way, and then once they all inflicted with vulnerable, then you can come behind them, that, and then hit them with Feed the Flame. So things go boom, things take extra damage, and then you hit them with your guns. They're taking extra damage from Firestorm and the Eruption mod that we have on our Death Shield, and it's just increasing damage. Now the other way we can do this is coming down to the bottom tree and going Pyromaniac way, and making this a complete ability spam with constant crowd control, because you're not going to be really doing too much of bossing. But if you want to be optimal, the way I do it, you see this right now, we can run top tree. If you want to do it this way, we can run bottom tree. Have Melting Point that increases resistance pierce when above 80% health, 30% when below 40% health. This doesn't really matter, because you're always going to be healing regardless. And then we would go top tree, activate Ignite skill, so then this feeds into this gives our Heat Wave a little bit of use. And activating your Ignite skill increases status power by 5% by 10% for 5 seconds. This is pretty niche, like I said, because you wouldn't be really using the Heat Wave other than just to apply burn, which is just good to have the extra damage out. But this is where you really want to do it. So you want to take Convection, Conduction, and Arsonist. I did try this build. This is extremely fun. I don't think it was intended to be able to ability spam all the time. But mind you, with a lot of other builds on the Pyro that do damage, like with the Heat Seeker set, I usually go bottom tree, because you feeding everything into your Thermal Bomb. But for this build, because you only feeding Ash, you can make this complete ability spam and then just have crowd control all the time with the middle tree build on a Pyromaniac, so you can make this ability spam. But it's realistically up to you. Preferably, I like to go the top tree route, but if you really want to make this fun and you don't really feel like shooting a whole bunch, honestly, I might switch over to the bottom middle tree for this, to make it an ability spam build, and then to have constant crowd control all the time. and then you get to have 100% uptime on your melee as well, and then you just keep pushing out damage constantly, over and over again. I feel like this is where it will shine the most instead of going top tier. And then for our ascension points, because I'm just level 30, I did choose to go all in on status power, no anomaly, because we already pushing out enough damage as it is. But optimally, I would prefer to run status power so we can keep enemies inflicted by Ash as long as possible, and it'll increase the duration of our vulnerable that we do have to make enemies take more damage while Ash is inflicted. So the goal is to that you want to have Ash as long as possible. So I chose to go status power, and I chose to go armor pierce because you're not really using your abilities to do damage other than your melee. So armor pierce for your weapon mods to help out your weapons deal that extra bit of damage. And I chose to go cooldown because Feed the Flames and Ash Blast have a huge cooldown. Huge. So I chose to go cooldown. But if I were any higher than this, I would go extra anomaly, extra resistance pierce, and extra weapon damage. This is how I would do it, hands down. But honestly, as far as Scorch Zealot goes, as far as the set, my thoughts on it is that I feel like it's a good reminder that not everything needs to be extremely amazing. Well, I wouldn't say extremely amazing, because this is good in its own right, and the fact that it's different, it allows you to play in a way that most pyromancers don't really play. Most pyromancers I see out there or watch on YouTube or Twitch, they don't really go the firepower route. Everything is almost always anomaly. And for firepower, I noticed recently that it's not very many firepower builds out there other than like the Trickster's terminal set, which I'll probably be talking about soon because I do really enjoy that. But as far as the Pyromancer goes, I feel like this is a good start to something new that doesn't require you to dip into volcanic rounds. But with that being said, this video is already long enough as it is, but I'll see you guys later, and I think maybe between tonight and tomorrow I will be uploading a video on the, actually you tell me what you want. I'll do either Devastator or Trickster, it's up to you, but I'll see you guys later.